Hello everyone, welcome to Alacrity Explains Medicine, where medicine becomes simple and memorable. Watch this video till the end because I'll be sharing exam relevant facts that you don't want to miss. Today we are going to be looking at Therapeutic Index in Pharmacology. Make sure to like this video, subscribe and share the video. So what is Therapeutic Index? Therapeutic Index is the ratio of the dose that produces toxicity in 50% of the population to the dose that produces the desired therapeutic effect in 50% of the population. The formula is TI, which stands for Therapeutic Index, is equal to TD 50, which is the toxic dose, divided by ED 50, which is the effective dose in 50% of the population. So in animals, we use lethal dose, which is often used instead of the therapeutic, the toxic dose. So it is the lethal dose, 50% of the animals, divided by the effective dose in 50% of the animals. So the interpretation of this is that therapeutic index is a quantitative measure of drug safety. So the larger the therapeutic index, the safer the drug. That means there's a wider margin between the effectiveness of that drug and the toxicity of the drug. So if you have a therapeutic index that is large, a larger therapeutic index, which makes the drug safer, what that means is the concentration of that drug, which will cause the effect, the desired effect of the drug. Let's say the concentration for the desired effect is 5 milligrams per dl. Now the concentration that we give a toxic dose, let's take for example it's around 1000 milligrams per dl. So you can see that the difference between 5 milligrams per dl and 1000 milligrams per dl is large. That's a larger therapeutic index. That means the concentration it takes for the drug to become toxic is 1000, and the concentration it takes for the effectiveness of that drug to occur in 50% of the population is 5 milligrams. So it takes a large concentration of that drug after its effective dose has been achieved to get toxicity, while a small therapeutic index indicates a narrow margin of safety. So therapeutic doses are close to toxic dose. For example, in this case, let's say we still have an effective dose of 5 milligrams, while we have a therapeutic dose of 8 milligrams. You can see how close 5 milligrams and 8 milligrams is. So in this situation, we have a small therapeutic index, which indicates a narrow margin of safety. So the quantitative dose response studies, which is follows the all or none law, is used to determine the median effective dose. That is the dose at which the median effective dose, the dose at which 50% of individuals exhibit the specific therapeutic effect, while the TD50, which is the median toxic dose, is the dose required to produce a defined toxic effect in 50% of the subjects. While for animals, like we said, we have the median lethal dose, which is the dose required to kill 50% of the subjects. So the dose response curve, we have the graded dose response curve and the quantitative dose response curve, which already discussed in our previous video on drug receptors. But the dose response curve and not the quantitative, that's the graded dose response curve, are used to determine the maximal efficacy and not a therapeutic index. That's for graded dose response curve. But for the therapeutic index, we use the quantitative dose response curve. And the quantitative curves, they review the variation in sensitivity to the drug among individuals in a population. So you have this curve here, where you have your dose and you have the percentage of people affected. So this is your therapeutic effect. If you have 50% of the population, there's a therapeutic effect, and 50% of the population, there's a toxic effect. So the gap between the therapeutic effect and the toxic effect gives us the therapeutic index. We now have the concept of therapeutic window, also referred to as therapeutic range. Now therapeutic window is just the range between the minimum toxic dose and the minimum effective dose. If the minimum toxic dose is 5 and the minimum toxic dose is let's say 1000, and the minimum effective dose is 5. The difference between the minimum toxic dose and the minimum effective dose gives us the therapeutic window. It gives us the range between the minimum toxic dose and the minimum effective. So clinically, plasma drug concentration ranges between the minimum effective concentration, below which therapeutic effect will not occur. We have a minimum effective concentration, which means below the minimum effective concentration, therapeutic effect cannot be achieved. We also have toxic concentration, which is the level at which toxic effect begins. So the goal of drug therapy is that it helps to maintain plasma drug levels within the therapeutic window. The goal of drug therapy is to maintain the concentration of drug in plasma within the therapeutic window. So if you have a toxic effect of at 1000 concentration and you have a therapeutic effect of 5 milligrams concentration, that means for the goal of therapy is to maintain the plasma drug concentration within, it could be 8 milligrams, it could be 20 milligrams, it could be 30 milligrams, it could be 50 milligrams, but as long as it does not exceed 1000 and as long as it is not below 5 milligrams, we have, that's the goal of therapy. So a narrow therapeutic window corresponds to a low therapeutic index. If you have a narrow therapeutic window, that means you also have a low therapeutic index, making that drug easily toxic. So the clinical significance of this is that we have drugs that have a high therapeutic index, that they have a wide margin of safety. So these drugs are safer, they pose less risk of toxicity. Routine plasma drug monitoring is not required. So the routine monitoring of this drug is not required compared to those with low therapeutic index. Example of drugs with a large therapeutic index are penicillin. We also have paracetamol. So that's an example of drug with high therapeutic index. For low therapeutic index, which is a narrow margin of safety, these drugs are potentially dangerous. They have a small safety range between the effective and the toxic doses. So they require accurate therapeutic drug monitoring. They require accurate therapeutic drug monitoring because at any slight increase in the dose of the drug might tilt the patient into toxicity. So dosage may need frequent adjustment, and example of these drugs are digoxin, warfarin, aminoglycosides, antibiotics, lithium, theophylline. These are drugs with low therapeutic index, and you need to know them because they are common MCQ questions. So clinical indications for drug level monitoring. Measuring the serum levels, drug levels, is useful when a drug with a low or narrow therapeutic index is being prescribed. That's the indication for drug level monitoring. Why do we need to monitor the drug level of blood? This is whenever there is a patient is administered with a low or narrow therapeutic index, or there's an unexpected response, either lack of therapeutic effect or an increased adverse effect, and a drug overdose is suspected. If a drug overdose is suspected, for example in paracetamol overdose or opioid overdose, there needs to be drug monitoring of the concentration of that drug. So these are concepts concerning therapeutic index that you need to commit to memory. You need to remember therapeutic index, it reflects the selectivity of drug to elicit a desired effect rather than toxicity. It's telling you how much concentration can you give of this drug to elicit a therapeutic effect without causing toxicity. So therapeutic index is a population based measure, which means in a population you're looking at what concentration of 50% of the population will give a therapeutic effect or a toxic effect. It does not predict individual patient responses. Take note of this. Therapeutic index does not predict individual patient responses. There are some patients that at a concentration below 5 milligrams, like we use in our example, you can achieve a therapeutic effect. There are some at a drug concentration of 1000 milligrams, you will not achieve a toxic effect. So that varies from patient to patient, but in 50% of the population. So whatever you do, the goal of therapy is to be within the therapeutic window. Now a drug can have a high therapeutic index but still be dangerous in specific patients populations. For example, people with renal impairment or drug interactions. While therapeutic index does not equate to therapeutic window. Please take note. Therapeutic index does not directly equate to therapeutic window. Therapeutic index is the ratio of doses. That's for the toxic dose to the effective dose. So it's a single number. When you take that ratio, you get a single number. If this is our effective dose and this is our toxic dose, if you take this ratio 1000 divided by 5, whatever you get is a single number. So therapeutic index is a single number, while for therapeutic window it is a range of doses or concentrations between the minimum effective and the minimum toxic. Therapeutic window is a range of doses. Therapeutic index is a single dose. Please take note of that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video, share the video, and subscribe to Alacrity Explains Medicine for more interesting videos. Thank you.